That night, the young woman left the party with empty hands, only a few blocks from home, then suddenly vanished into the quiet darkness.
As we drove up, I glanced over, I saw what appeared to be a body, partially nude body. I was looking for signs of life.
Our camera was rolling this afternoon as Albuquerque police took in a suspect in the rape of an elderly woman.
Katie Sepich, affectionately known as Katie, grew up in Carlsbad, New Mexico with her parents, Diane and Dave Sepich. The oldest of 3 children, with AJ and Caroline as her younger siblings, Katie quickly revealed her intelligence, strength, and a natural sense of leadership. After graduating in business from New Mexico State University, she was preparing to step into a new chapter of her life, planning to pursue a master's degree in business administration, a goal she had set long ago in her typically determined way. Her family always described the 22-year-old as energetic, straightforward, and full of ambition, someone who knew exactly what she wanted from an early age. Her father, Dave, still remembers her as a fireball, lively, mischievous, and pouring her whole heart into everything she touched, from the little performances she staged at home to her passion for sports. Katie was always the spark that made everything around her more joyful. Her best friend, Amy, remembers her as strikingly beautiful yet surprisingly humble, someone who could poke fun at herself with charm and make everyone laugh with her sharp, thoughtful humor. To her younger sister, Caroline, Katie was the one who turned every moment into an adventure, sweet, outgoing, and sometimes a bit of a bossy big sister. Katie loved to plan things out and pull everyone along to her rhythm, always declaring with that unmistakable Katie confidence, "Here's what we're going to do. Let's go." In 2003, Katie's life revolved around school and the plans she was building for her future. She was part of a sorority, worked as a waitress at a local Mexican restaurant to support herself, and was 8 months into a relationship with her boyfriend, Joe Bischoff. It was a busy yet exciting season, as Katie was enjoying her final summer before starting graduate school, an important milestone she had prepared for over a long time. But amid that fast-moving rhythm, small cracks began to appear in her relationship with Joe. She was getting ready to begin a new stage with her graduate program, while Joe was preparing to leave town, moving a considerable distance away to take over his family's business. The distance, the changes, and the uncertainty surrounding what lay ahead left both of them unsure about their future together. On the night of August 31st, 2003, in Las Cruces, New Mexico, right on Labor Day weekend, Katie and Joe tried to push all their tension aside and enjoy an evening out with friends. Katie went with Joe, her roommate Tracy, and a group of others. They stopped by a few bars, had some drinks, danced, and chatted excitedly. When the bars began closing, everyone moved to a house party with around 30 to 40 people, where the fun carried on until nearly dawn. Security cameras at one of the bars even captured Katie and Joe holding hands, looking close and relaxed, making everyone believe things were fine. But at the party, everything shifted when Katie saw Joe kissing another woman. In the mix of alcohol and raw emotions, they argued in front of several people, and Katie left the party alone at 3 a.m. on September 1st, 2003. Joe and a friend later drove Katie's car around the area to look for her. When they passed by her house and saw her bedroom dark, they assumed she had gone home and fallen asleep, so they didn't stop. Joe returned to the party and, still intoxicated, fell asleep next to the woman he had caused trouble with. By the time the group slowly woke up, they realized Katie had never come back, even though her car was still parked outside. She lived only a few blocks from the party, yet she had walked off empty-handed into a cold, dark night. Her phone, wallet, and keys were still inside the house. Everything in her car remained untouched. She vanished into the darkness with nothing in her hands, leaving behind a growing sense of unease in everyone who knew her. Tracy, who knew things had not been smooth between Katie and Joe recently, immediately asked Joe whether the two of them had argued that night. Joe first denied it, not even mentioning that he had been close with another woman at the party. Tracy tried calling everyone who might have seen Katie, but every call went unanswered, making her more anxious by the minute. Unable to take it anymore, Tracy demanded that Joe tell the truth. Only then did Joe reluctantly admit that they had argued while drinking, but insisted it went no further and said he believed Katie was simply trying to teach him a lesson, instead of being worried. Joe seemed irritated that she had walked off. As the uneasiness grew heavier, Tracy rushed back to their house, went straight into Katie's room, and saw everything exactly as it had been, untouched. Tracy's mother, who had been home the entire night, also confirmed she had not heard anything unusual. They called nearby hospitals, only to be told that no one matching Katie's description had been brought in. They then reached out to police, even wondering whether Katie might have been detained for intoxication, but the answer was still no. Countless possibilities began swirling around them. Could Katie have stayed over at someone's house they hadn't thought of yet? Or had she run into some kind of serious incident on her way home and was lying somewhere unnoticed? As the questions kept echoing with no answers, everyone realized they could not wait any longer. It was time to report Katie missing.
22-year-old graduate student Katie Sepich was walking home from a late Saturday night party. Tonight's investigators have made the case a top priority.
We're interviewing witnesses, family, friends, anybody that may have seen her that night at the bars here in town.
About 600 feet away, Katie's mother, Katie Sepich, woke up on the morning of September 1st, 2003 with a tight, overwhelming sense of unease. She couldn't explain why. She only knew that a mother's intuition was warning her that something was terribly wrong. Jayan later said that, from the moment she opened her eyes, a heavy, invisible fear pressed down on her, as if something awful was approaching. By 2:15 p.m. that same day, that intuition turned into a nightmare when the phone rang with 6 words that nearly shattered the entire family. When police arrived at Katie's home, they walked around to the back and found the first signs of a serious incident. The back window screen was torn. One of Katie's sandals lay alone on the ground, and the gravel beneath the window had been heavily disturbed, looking like the trace of a struggle or someone being pulled away. These signs showed that Katie had returned home during the night, but never made it inside. As investigators swept the area, they realized they were stepping into a high-priority missing person case, and every passing minute now carried critical weight.
As we drove up, as I glanced over, I saw what appeared to be a body, partially nude body. I was looking for signs of life.
At 11 a.m., a couple out hunting near an old dump site on the east side of Las Cruces, New Mexico, came across a scene that made them freeze in place. On the ground lay the remains of a woman in a state of severe disarray, with her back and shoulders showing signs of burn-like damage, and her legs positioned in an unusual way, as if someone had deliberately arranged them. Nearby, tire impressions in the dirt suggested that a large vehicle, something similar to a pickup truck, had stopped there and left the remains at the site. Just a few hours later, the details began to align when police received the report that Katie, a 22-year-old young woman, had disappeared during the night. The area where the remains were found sat in the middle of miles of open desert, where extreme heat and wildlife could quickly erode any potential evidence. For that reason, the couple's chance discovery at that exact moment became an unexpected stroke of luck. Otherwise, the remains might have been severely affected to the point where determining what led to the tragedy would have been far more difficult. Police contacted Tracy and asked whether she could come in to identify someone who might be connected to Katie's disappearance. She agreed immediately, fully believing it was just a formality, that Katie had simply ended up at a hospital or police station without identification, and that she was being called in to help bring her friend home. Tracy had no idea she was about to face the cruelest moment of her life. When investigators pulled back the upper section of the bag containing the remains, Tracy froze. The woman inside was no longer the bright, full-of-life friend she had always known. The expression on her face carried a depth of pain that left Tracy unable to breathe, struggling to accept that this was truly Katie. Later examinations confirmed that Katie had been the victim of a severe assault, followed by being overpowered to the point of losing consciousness. Her back and shoulders showed traces of a flammable substance, and her remains had been partially burned before the flames went out on their own. Biological material found beneath Katie's fingernails proved she had fought back fiercely in her final moments. The site where the remains were discovered showed no signs of a struggle, suggesting the tragedy had likely occurred elsewhere, possibly near her home or just a few steps away in the darkness of that night. Items Katie wore every day, like her watch and 2 rings, were also missing and were likely taken by the perpetrator. Katie's parents shared that she had always had a naturally raspy voice, something that made it nearly impossible for her to scream loudly when she needed help. Even as a child, whenever she tried to shout, the sound that came out was only a faint, strained whisper, never strong enough for anyone to truly hear. That detail haunted everyone involved in the investigation. The thought that Katie may have tried desperately to call for help, yet her voice was never loud enough to reach anyone. The biological material found beneath Katie's fingernails was sent to the CODIS system in hopes of identifying whoever was responsible, but the results came back empty. There were no matches at all, something unusually rare for a case involving such significant evidence. Investigators expected that the person behind this might have had a prior record, but every lead collapsed into silence. With no other direction to follow, they went back to the party that night and interviewed everyone close to Katie, from her roommate Tracy to her boyfriend Joe. It was only then that Joe admitted they had argued while drinking, a detail he had intentionally kept from police earlier. Joe said that despite the recent difficulties in their relationship, especially with the upcoming distance between them, he still pictured a long future with Katie. They had even looked at rings together, and he had bought one with her birthstone. Not officially an engagement ring, but for them, it had felt like a quiet promise of the life they hoped to build.
You know you're here. Yeah. You know it's not good. Okay? Yes, sir. Girlfriend Katie is passed away. Okay?
Get married.
Thanks for cleaning it.
However, suspicion began to grow when Joe not only admitted to the argument and to being close with another woman while drunk at the party, but also because of one detail that immediately caught investigators' attention. out of nearly 40 people present that night. Joe was the only one who refused to provide a DNA sample. That instantly shifted every eye toward him, because even though his statements sounded reasonable on the surface, the way he reacted to a basic investigative request did not resemble the behavior of someone who genuinely wanted to help uncover the truth behind the tragedy that had happened to Katie.
I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about what happened.
Just last night, she got mad at me. She came home from the bar. She got mad at me because I was kind of pulling her off my roommate's sister. She walked in and then she left. And that's the last, that's the last time I saw her. I drove by her house. Her light wasn't on, so I didn't stop. I was really drunk. I really didn't care. I kind of like that. I don't care about a relationship very much. I'm not really faithful as I should be.
He continued to deny having anything to do with the tragedy that happened to Katie. Joe admitted they had argued and that things had gotten out of hand because of alcohol. But when asked whether he could have been responsible, he reacted almost instinctively, insisting that there was no way he could ever cause her harm.
Did you kill her?
No, sir.
How did it happen?
What, sir?
Her death.
I don't know, sir. I know nothing about it. Sir, I know nothing about it. I feel so bad. Katie was everything to me.
If she was everything to you, why were you screwing around on her?
I know, sir. I get drunk. I'm stupid,
What made investigators even more suspicious was the fact that Joe had made multiple calls to Katie's phone that morning, as if he were genuinely trying to find her. But people at the party insisted that Joe was actually holding Katie's phone at the very moment he dialed her number, along with her wallet and keys. That raised a major question. If he knew the phone was in his own hands, then what was the purpose of those calls? Was Joe attempting to stage a sequence of actions to make it look like he was worried and searching for Katie, or even trying to create a false alibi for himself? Just a few days after Katie's tragedy was discovered, Joe left Las Cruces and returned to his family's home about 300 miles away, right at the moment when police still considered him someone who needed further questioning. When investigators asked Joe to come back for a second interview, he immediately refused, saying he could not return. Joe's family quickly hired an attorney for him, and as is typical in sensitive cases, the attorney advised him to remain completely silent. At this stage, even though Joe had not been officially named a suspect, police were almost entirely focused on him because his behavior kept growing more unusual, avoiding contact, refusing to cooperate, and repeatedly turning down very basic questions. This was the same person who had tearfully told detectives he wanted to marry Katie and could not live without her. Yet now, he cut off all communication, as if trying to distance himself from the case as much as possible. Joe's attorney argued that he was dissatisfied with how the investigation was being handled, so he chose to withdraw. But unless police had clear grounds to compel Joe to return, they had no legal power to force him into another interview or make him provide a DNA sample. This left Katie's family deeply confused. To them, Joe had always seemed like a kind, respectful young man who cared about Katie deeply. They never imagined he could be connected to such a devastating incident. Even Tracy believed firmly that Katie had been the victim of a random attack, not by anyone who knew her, and certainly not by Joe. Katie's funeral was held with more than 1,000 people in attendance, so many that the church had to set up speakers outside so those crowding the grounds could still hear the service. But in that sea of people, one empty space stood out. Joe was not there. After learning that many in the community reacted strongly against the idea of him attending, Joe chose to stay far away, continuing to distance himself from everything involving Katie. This left her family even more confused and hurt. They could not understand the behavior of someone who had once claimed to love her so deeply, outside the church, even with the atmosphere of mourning surrounding everything. The investigation pushed forward. Police continued examining the tires they had collected, hoping they would match the impressions found near the spot where the remains were discovered. But every result led to a dead end. Detectives even placed a hidden camera near Katie's grave, hoping that if Joe visited quietly, he might say something important. But once again, nothing. As every lead went cold, police announced a reward of $50,000 for anyone providing information that could lead to answers. And not long after, that amount was increased to $100,000. Even so, the case remained shrouded in darkness, and the person responsible was still beyond the grasp of the law. However, the investigation took an unexpected turn when detectives obtained Joe's DNA from Katie's bedroom to compare with the biological material recovered at the scene. The results came back with no match at all, officially clearing him. Once he was informed, Joe finally agreed to cooperate and provided a direct DNA sample, explaining that he had previously been afraid of being misunderstood because the two of them had still been physically close in recent weeks, and he worried that his DNA appearing somewhere might lead to him being wrongly accused. After numerous delays, Joe was removed from the list of potential suspects, allowing investigators to focus on new directions. But the cost was a significant amount of wasted time. Detective Mark Mears was so frustrated that he admitted he had to try very hard not to lose his temper over Joe's lack of cooperation, especially since Joe could have helped ease the family's pain from the very beginning. Dave, Katie's father, agreed, believing that if Joe had been honest and cooperative earlier, the entire investigation would not have been slowed down so severely. Investigators then believed they had found a major lead, a detail that might connect them to an incident that had occurred about 7 miles from Las Cruces, just 11 days before Katie's tragedy, in Green Bay, Wisconsin. A 25-year-old woman had endured a horrific night after arguing with her boyfriend and leaving a bar alone. As she stepped outside into the darkness, she was forced into the back of a pickup truck by 2 men and taken to a remote farm. There, she became the victim of a severe assault involving a serious violation, was overpowered until she could no longer resist, and had a flammable liquid poured on her before the attackers tried to erase evidence with fire and left her in critical condition. Despite multiple injuries, the woman managed to crawl to a nearby house, where the homeowner immediately called 911 to get her to a hospital.
You know what the vehicle was that these people were in? Oh, now I can smell the burn on her. You can smell the burn? Yeah, you know, her flesh. Now we can see you were lit on fire. Were there 1 or 2 people? Do you know, what did they look like? Were they tall? Short?
It was astonishing that the woman survived such an ordeal and could still remember enough details about the 2 men who attacked her to help police create a composite sketch. The similarities between her case and Katie's tragedy forced investigators to ask whether there could be a connection, despite the great distance between the 2 locations. At that point, with almost no other leads left, every possibility had to be considered. As soon as the sketch was released, a manager at a dairy farm immediately recognized the faces as 2 of his employees, Gregorio Morales, age 27, and Juanito, age 23. Both had left town shortly after the incident, but Gregorio had recently returned to work. The manager worked with police to obtain Gregorio's DNA by keeping the drink bottle he had just used and turning it over to investigators. Months later, Results confirmed that Gregorio's DNA matched the woman from Green Bay. He was convicted of a severe assault involving a serious violation, kidnapping, and first-degree reckless injury. Receiving a total sentence of 50 years, Juanito, believed to have poured the flammable liquid on the victim before the attempt to destroy evidence with fire, was also arrested and accepted a plea deal, receiving 70 years in prison. However, even though the two cases were strikingly similar, neither Gregorio's nor Juanito's DNA matched the evidence collected in Katie's case. Detectives said the feeling at that moment wasn't like going back to square one. It was like falling back to square zero. Every spark of hope vanished, and a wave of disappointment swept through the entire investigative team as the case remained unsolved. Time moved quickly, and by this point it had been more than 2 years since Katie's remains were found, yet the case was still at a standstill. To understand the next turning point, we have to look back at an incident that happened just 9 weeks after Katie's tragedy. At that time, a man carrying a dangerous object capable of causing harm slipped into the apartment of 2 New Mexico State University students, Anela and Leslie. Terrified by the sudden intrusion, both women immediately ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and called 911 in a state of panic.
911 what city?
Officer?
What's your emergency?
I was only someone trying to break into our house.
What's your name?
I'm not lost. Oh.
Vanilla? I need you to calm down, okay? You there?
I don't know.
Both Anela and Leslie had seen this man lingering around the apartment complex many times before, watching them from a distance and even peeking through their window. But this time, he had actually stepped inside their home. If police had not arrived when they did, no one knows how frightening the situation might have become. Fortunately, officers reached the scene in time and arrested the 23-year-old man named Gabriel Avila. What sparked controversy was the judge's decision to allow him to be released so he could take care of personal matters, a ruling that investigators still struggle to understand even today. Facing the possibility of a sentence of up to 9 years for unlawful entry and intent to cause harm, Gabriel fled to Mexico and remained in hiding until 2005. He was eventually caught while attempting to return to the United States. And a year later, Gabriel was convicted of aggravated burglary with intent to commit a serious harmful act and was ordered to serve 9 years in prison. When Gabriel was sent to prison, he was required to submit a DNA sample as part of standard procedure, and detectives were stunned when the system returned a match to the biological material collected at the scene of Katie's case. Even more shocking was that the name Gabriel Avila was completely unfamiliar to law enforcement in Las Cruces, as well as to everyone in Katie's life. No one had ever heard of him. During the review process, investigators reached out to Gabriel's ex-wife, who had filed for divorce after he was convicted in the earlier break-in case. She told them she once found a strange ring in Gabriel's pickup truck, a ring she had no explanation for. Only then did police confirm that it belonged to Katie. When asked about the truck Gabriel had been driving at the time of the crime, his ex-wife said he had sold it, but that she could still contact the new owner. Although the tires on the vehicle had been replaced, investigators tracked down and recovered the original set, and the tread patterns unexpectedly matched the impressions found near the location where Katie's remains were discovered. This became another crucial piece of the puzzle, further reinforcing the direct connection between Gabriel and the case that investigators had been unable to solve for so long. However, before the case went to trial, Gabriel Avila unexpectedly confessed to everything He said that early that morning, while leaving a friend's house after using a harmful substance, he nearly hit Katie with his pickup truck. Startled, he pulled over and offered to drive her home, but Katie refused because she was only a few blocks away. Gabriel said she looked unsteady after a long night out, but Katie told him she was fine. He drove off, but a few minutes later passed by again and saw Katie standing at her window, trying to get inside because she didn't have her wallet or keys. He asked once more if she needed help, and Katie replied that she couldn't get into the house. Gabriel claimed that in that moment he lost control, rushed toward her, and subjected her to a severe assault involving a serious violation, overpowering her until she could no longer resist. He then put Katie in his truck, drove to a remote area, left her remains there, and tried to erase evidence by using fire. Detective Mark Mears said the likelihood of Gabriel encountering Katie that night was incredibly small. If she had left the party 30 seconds earlier, or even 1 minute later, Gabriel might never have seen her, and that tragedy might never have happened.
Today, we are rejoicing that it looks like we have the person who killed our daughter. We're so incredibly grateful for all of the hard work.
One day after Christmas, Gabriel Avila was officially charged with causing the tragedy that took Katie's life, along with kidnapping. What made it even more heartbreaking was that the day he was charged should have been Katie's 26th birthday. Prosecutor Susana Martinez stated that she had no intention of dropping any charges and would not accept any kind of reduced plea. She made it clear there was no possible path to losing this case, and both Gabriel and his attorney knew it. By May 2007, Gabriel Avila pleaded guilty to causing the heartbreaking outcome, committing a severe assault involving a serious violation, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. In court, he apologized to the Sepich family, saying he did not understand why he had committed such an act. Dave said he sensed genuine remorse in Gabriel's words, but it could never change the loss their family had suffered. Jayan shared that she chose forgiveness so her heart could find peace and so Gabriel might have a chance at redemption. In the end, Gabriel was sentenced to 69 years in prison and would not even be eligible for parole consideration until 2043 after serving 30 years. However, given the extreme seriousness of the case, the likelihood of him ever being granted parole is nearly zero.
That's how many cold cases one New Mexico police department has reopened just this year. Officers say the success of Katie's Law has a lot to do with it.
Katie's family poured all their pain into a desire to create real change, asking themselves how such a devastating tragedy could become something meaningful for the community. When Katie's remains were found, New Mexico law, and nearly every other state, still did not allow DNA collection when a person was simply arrested. At that time, DNA could only be taken if someone was convicted and sent to prison, meaning countless dangerous individuals could slip through the system before ever being found guilty. Jayan explained, "I started researching. I realized most states only collected DNA after conviction, but back then, only 5 states allowed DNA to be taken at the time of arrest for a felony." She dug deeper, reading every study and every case she could find, uncovering example after example showing that if DNA had been collected earlier, many lives could have been protected. Jayan emphasized that her goal was not to speed up her daughter's case, but to fix a dangerous gap in the system. She wanted something to change, because this simple step, collecting DNA at the time of arrest, could save thousands of innocent people in the future. One case that haunted Jayan was that of Chester Dwayne Turner, who had once been arrested in California for a harmful incident involving a dangerous object. But because there was not enough evidence to convict him, his DNA was never taken. After that, he was arrested a total of 21 more times before his first DNA sample ever entered the system. Only then did investigators discover that his DNA matched evidence from 12 victims, individuals who had suffered severe attacks followed by tragic loss of life. To Jayan, that was the clearest reminder possible. Something had to change.
You might remember the name Katie Sepich. Her name is back in the headlines. On Friday, the Senate passed Katie's Law, a bill that would help states set up DNA databases for people arrested for felonies.
Victory tonight for one New Mexico family trying to make sure their daughter's murder resulted in meaningful action. President Obama has just signed a nationwide version of Katie's Law. New Mexico has already had Katie's Law on the books since 2007. It's named for former NMSU student Katie Sepich.
A bill to expand the state's Katie's Law is also moving forward at the Roundhouse.
It's a bittersweet week for the family of Katie Sepich.
I'm proud to say that 2 days after what would have been Katie's 32nd birthday, the Senate passed our bill unanimously.
The day after Christmas was Katie's birthday. She would have been 32. And so, we still miss her every day.
Katie's Law officially went into effect in New Mexico in 2006, becoming a major turning point in the legal system. Under this law, anyone arrested for a serious violent offense must provide a DNA sample immediately, instead of waiting until after a conviction as before. Looking back, Jayan realized that if this law had existed at the time, less than 3 months after Katie's tragedy, when Gabriel broke into the apartment of the two students, Anella and Leslie, he would have been required to submit a DNA sample. And with that alone, investigators could have identified his connection early on and removed him from the community much sooner. Jayan understood that Katie's Law could not save her daughter, but it could prevent similar tragedies from happening to others, and that belief became the driving force behind her determination to fight for change. To date, 31 states across the United States have adopted Katie's Law or implemented similar programs. By 2011, the law was further expanded to allow DNA collection in every arrest involving a serious felony, marking an important step forward in identifying, tracking, and preventing harmful acts. Along that journey, Jayan founded DNA Saves, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness among lawmakers and communities about the critical role of DNA testing in investigations. After 2 decades of advocacy and relentless effort, the Sepich family acknowledges that they may never know exactly how many people have been protected because of Katie's Law. But they firmly believe that somewhere out there, countless innocent lives have been safeguarded, and that belief is what allows them to keep moving forward. They trust that Katie's Law will help resolve thousands of long-standing cases, prevent other tragedies from happening to innocent people, and protect those who have nothing to do with the situation from being unfairly suspected or prosecuted.
Our camera was rolling this afternoon as Albuquerque police took in a suspect in the rape of an elderly woman. 27-year-old Francisco Perez is accused of attacking the 76-year-old victim at Alamosa Elementary School. Tonight, Albuquerque police are crediting a state DNA collection law known as Katie's Law for helping them find Perez.
They're decade-old rape and murder cases that have haunted the state for years, like the killing of Susan Laporte and the strangling of Maria Padilla, both in 1985. But now the Santa Fe Police Department is reopening hundreds of those cold cases, 318 to be exact. Lieutenant Andrea Dobbins says the PD has a freezer full of evidence. In July, police sent thousands of pieces of hair, blood, and clothing samples to the state crime lab. to try and finally crack some of those cases. Just recently, they sent even more DNA samples. Dobbin says the big push to solve the cold cases is the success of Katie's Law.
Katie's younger brother, AJ, said that throughout his childhood, he always looked up to his sister, someone who felt like a mother and a big sister at the same time, always guiding and protecting him in everything. He remembers the little performances Katie used to put on for the family, and how he would always try to squeeze himself in as the backup singer, even though Katie didn't always want anyone stealing her spotlight. But when it came to protecting her brother, she never hesitated. AJ said no one ever dared bother him, because Katie was always right behind him, ready to stand up for him. When the tragedy happened, AJ described it as a shock beyond anything he could express. You don't know how to move forward. You just try to get through the next minute, the next breath. He admitted that Katie could be so strong-willed that she was sometimes hard to handle, but that same strength was exactly what made her the best person to have by your side. A steady presence, a true friend. As for their sister Caroline, who was only 9 years old when Katie disappeared from her life, she said her memories after that point were clear yet colorless. It was like that bright, loving light just went out. For Jayan, the loss forced her to change the way she looked at everything. She acknowledged that it is easy to fall into a cycle of what if only, and maybe things could have been different. But after losing her daughter, she learned that those words only weigh the heart down. She said, "Face what's in front of you. Change what you can. But don't go back and ask, what if that day it doesn't help anything except make the pain heavier?" Closing this painful journey, it's impossible not to think about everything Katie Sepich endured and about the extraordinary strength of her family, who transformed an irreplaceable loss into the driving force behind changing the law and protecting thousands of people they will never even meet. Katie's story reminds me that sometimes just one wrong moment, one unintended encounter, can lead to consequences no one could ever foresee, and it's our awareness, our attention to the unusual things around us, that can become the shield that saves a life. This is why I wanted to share her story in this true crime documentary series, not to stir fear, but to help us understand the fragility of life and the importance of looking out for one another. Thank you for staying with today's story until the very end. If you feel connected to Katie's journey, please share this video so her story can reach even farther, and leave a comment as a tribute to this strong young woman. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story in the True Crime documentary series. I'll see you in the next video, wishing safety and protection for you and everyone you love.